Bitcoin is currently dumping. Meanwhile, the stock market is falling and altcoins are getting completely banged. And in this video, we're going to be talking about just how messy it can get. And is all hope lost? Or in fact, is this just a little dump? So if the idea of a little dump doesn't scare you, in fact, it gets you a little excited, hit that like and subscribe for daily cryptocurrency videos. And without any further ado, let's completely and absolutely dump into Bitcoin, where we see, yes, this is on a weekly chart. You might be looking at this thinking, hey, this isn't this isn't some massive dump. But if we look on a daily chart, you can see something big actually is happening. We haven't gotten a daily close, but we're on the verge of doing something for the very first time since the very beginning of November. So for the first time in about 45 days, and this is extremely big. And I want to talk about, is this going to continue? How low can it go? Is it a good opportunity to get in? Or are we about to get just absolutely completely banged big time? So I want to start off by looking at this. You can see that in over the past 60 minutes, over $200 million worth of cryptocurrency was liquidated in just the past hour. And it is important to note that people are selling, okay? Checkmate on X says here, remember when folks were telling you long-term holders never sell? That's not true. People were lying. The largest revived supply volume since 2018's bottom, so 6 years ago, and the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, aka the biggest volume of old coins taking profit in a bull market ever. This is pretty big. Now, it is important to note the inverse is also true. We are still right around 100,000 US dollars, meaning that the market is soaking up the largest sell side action for Bitcoin in history at the highest price range in history. And we're still up here. So that's one thing to take from this, is that it's not like Bitcoin is just getting a little bit of a dumpy price action and it's causing a massive 10% dump in the market. No, there is a lot of profit taking. There is a lot of sell side action, and Bitcoin is doing, for better, for worse, actually a pretty good job at absorbing a lot of this. As we've seen Bitcoin kind of get better and better at absorbing dumpiness over the past couple of months specifically. And also, yesterday's sell pressure was the sixth highest this year, about $2.7 billion or about 26,000 Bitcoin. The current sell pressure is enormous, absolutely enormous. One of the greatest, James Van Straten on X says he's ever seen. Both profit and loss taken together on a continued daily basis. He says he can't stress enough, big players are waiting for the price and not chasing it. This is not retail stepping in front of this train. He's saying that this is incredibly bullish. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of sell side action here. Also, important, Saylor just indicated in his latest interview that in 2025, he will be halting the ATM purchases and switching to the convertible bond strategy, meaning no more share dilution, meaning no more selling stock to raise capital, instead giving certificates to be sold at later dates, blah, blah, blah. Basically what that means, MicroStrategy's share price remains flat when he sells it to buy Bitcoin, but with the new strategy he said is coming in 2025, MicroStrategy's price should actually go mega positive because they're issuing convertible bonds and buying Bitcoin. He's basically saying if you're selling now, you are selling here, meaning that he's anticipating that this is similar to where we are in terms of MicroStrategy's stock and along with it, Bitcoin's price. We also see the spot Bitcoin ETFs have taken in 142,000 Bitcoin in the last 6 weeks, with a total asset under management rising about 50 billion to 115 billion. So you can see these daily flows here. And as well, Powell, according to Bob Lucas here, and I want to talk about this a little bit. Did Powell just ruin Christmas? He says it's very rare for a cycle to recover from this type of move, especially as the weekly cycle that began in August is very deep in the cycle. He's saying that his view is now more likely the declining phase is in control with a January 15th to 20th potential low, meaning what Bob Lucas is saying here is that he believes that the price of Bitcoin is likely to go down for the next month until, and potentially bottoming right before Donald Trump takes office. And you can see here, Fred Krueger on X saying he doubts it. Now, of course, I'm not saying I agree with this, but I kind of wanted to talk about this because I'm curious what your thoughts are. That's a pretty dumpy prediction. I personally don't see that as the most likely scenario right now. For pizza's sake, I want to zoom out and, just take a look at where we are. We are quite literally just at the price we were for Bitcoin about a week ago. So this is not like, it can turn, absolutely, as I talked about yesterday, this can turn into a much bigger dump, but we haven't, I mean, this so far is not only par for the course, it's so far not even really that big of a dump. Now, keep in mind, it is a bigger dump in the sense if you're holding only altcoins. Yeah, I mean, altcoins are getting banged. As altcoin, I mean, I'm looking at the side of my screen right now. Bitcoin fluctuating between 1, 2, 3% down. And I'm looking at some of these altcoins 10, 15, 20% down, right? So yeah, there's a big difference between 3% down and 20% down, meaning if you're holding all alts, if you're holding only altcoins, you are feeling this pain a lot more than people that are either holding some Bitcoin and some altcoins or just Bitcoin. But is that really anything new? No, I mean, that's quite literally how it always goes. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on this. I personally don't think that is the most likely scenario, but I wanted to talk about it anyway, just because it's always a possibility. But we see that Michael Saylor further clarifying a 2% investment or a 2% investment allocation from the US alone would push Bitcoin to about $800,000 per coin. That's absolutely bananas. We also see that according to Bitcoin Archive, every single time the Bitcoin 4-hour RSI has been at these levels since October, it has bounced strongly. He's saying that Bitcoin looks oversold here. And if we actually look at this, you can see every time that we came down here on the RSI, it was the precursor to a coming pump. It did mark the bottom. We also see that Fred Krueger on X has some predictions, and I highlighted some, and I want to discuss some of these. So he's saying that he believes Bitcoin will, I don't know if he's memeing here. He's saying Bitcoin will hit a high of 420,000. I mean, that would be big. Nice. We also see that Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and Merrill Lynch will offer full access to ETFs. I think that's very likely. He's saying he believes the MicroStrategy price will be 2,000 per share. Absolutely very big. I'm not sure. I mean, that's currently, as we're talking, the price of MicroStrategy is about $330 per share. He's saying that he believes there will be a Bitcoin reserve with $100 billion of new money. Crypto alts, he's saying, will generally underperform. So this is one thing I wanted to highlight to really talk about and maybe get your opinion. So far, alts have been underperforming, right? And it's always been a possibility, and it's been a possibility that I've discussed many times. And again, not saying I believe it's the base case, but there's always the possibility that with so much interest and so much capital flowing into Bitcoin specifically, maybe altcoins don't pump as much as they have historically. I personally believe altcoins are still going to do very well, and there is going to be a very strong alt season. But, basically, I'm posing this question because, I mean, I have altcoins. So ideally, if I want to make money on alts, then this would not be something I would prefer. But if this would happen, how would you react? Would you be protected from maybe a very underwhelming alt season? I personally think, again, I think alts will do very well, but I think still Bitcoin is in charge. And I think Bitcoin is pretty much going to continue taking the lead at this point as things stand right now until at least the Trump administration takes office. But we're also seeing his final prediction that I want to talk about is that the S&P 500 will hit 7,000. So that's pretty big. A lot of these predictions, some of them are obvious, I believe, and some are very not obvious. So yeah, curious to see what you think about that as well. But Bitcoin is still tracking the global M2 money supply with a 70-day lag. Two scenarios are that there's a dislocation from the global M2 thanks to Bitcoin native buy sides, or a continued following into a deep mid-cycle correction, meaning either Bitcoin kind of decouples here or it doesn't. Now, one thing I want to highlight is you can see, this is zoomed in, and you can see on this chart, actually if we zoom out, you can see the correlation is kind of weird. And actually somebody asked, could you do a zoom out over the last 5 or 6 years? And this is kind of interesting as well, because you can see the price of Bitcoin in orange and the global money supply in white. And you can see here, for example, the money supply was going up and Bitcoin just completely popped up. But then you can see Bitcoin started declining well before the money supply started. And so basically my point of saying this is that it doesn't seem like there is a very consistent correlation here. It seems like you can kind of draw your own conclusions, and there's not anything like very concrete to draw from this, at least from looking in the past 5 or 6 years. You can see now where people are kind of scared, maybe, as you can see up here. You see the money supply decreasing drastically, and then people are fearful that we're about to enter basically another maybe similar drop in terms of Bitcoin down to about 70,000. And as I talked about yesterday, that's a possibility. I'm going to talk about that in a second as well. But we also see that the Dutch government is, there's an open letter urging the government to sell gold and buy Bitcoin. And also there's this, where's the top? Raphael posted a long thread. You can follow him on X if you want to see the entire thing. But it's about 20 charts that help you gauge late bull markets and top formations. And basically, I'm not going to go over this whole thing. I'm just going to cover the very first one. But basically, all of these are showing us that we, at least according to history and all of these indicators, we are not at a top yet. The MVRV, a classic indicator here measuring the unrealized profitability, and has previously signaled overheated being above 7. Currently, we're only at 3, meaning if you look at this chart, you can see how high it's gone in the past to signal these tops. And if we're all the way down here, yeah, this is a massive anomaly. If this were to be a top, this would be unlike any top we've ever seen. And so again, it's just one more reason, along 20 more reasons actually, to kind of show that it's very unlikely that we're at a top. And it's kind of crazy in my opinion that anybody would be definitively saying we would be at some sort of top when it's so early, even in this micro dump. As I talked about yesterday, we could drop all the way down here, and it would still fit the bullish narrative. As I talked about yesterday, however, if we close below this, then that would be very bearish, and I would turn very bearish if we did that. But all I'm saying is, you look at that, we have a lot of wiggle room where we can even go down over the next few weeks or even sooner, and it still wouldn't even be like a, oh no, everything's done scenario. It would still be a par for the course, pretty normal correction for Bitcoin. So with that, you can see on the daily chart, it'll be big to see by the time you're watching this. Maybe it already has closed or not. But at the time of recording, there's a couple hours until the 21-day moving average either has a close below or above it for the price of Bitcoin, meaning we close above the 21-day or below it, which would be the very first. Well, we did technically close above it or below it, on December 10th, about 9 days ago. But then we just bounced the next day. So overall, today and tomorrow are very important, especially as we head into weekend trading, to see if Bitcoin holds this 21-day moving average, which it has been holding the 21-day moving average since basically the election. This was the election day where we pumped, but we were kind of struggling on the 21-day there. That was a big decisive move right here. This was a very important thing. A pro-crypto party that won the US election, and the price started going up immediately as those results were calculated. So this is the very first time we're kind of down in this range since then, okay? Down at the 21-day moving average. You can see we were struggling. There was a lot of, you can see on the daily chart, from the beginning of March all the way until October, we were struggling to even get above it. But we've been above it now since then. So if we fall below this, really, as long as we're kind of teeter-tottering between the 21 and 50, which is about 90,000 to 100,000, that's correction, like short-term correction territory, but it's not like, oh no, bull market's over territory. In fact, even coming down to the 100-day is still bull market territory. Basically, as long as because again, if you really look at this, we had this whole range we were trading at for most of the year of 2024. We broke out. We actually had an initial breakout here. We had this initial breakout. It was fail. It was a rejection. And then we did break out. Okay. And we haven't even come down here once. So I'm just saying, worst case scenario, in still being very bullish, that's a possibility. But we haven't done that yet. It's still way too early to start panicking about that. I think really why a lot of the sentiment is so poor right now is exactly because of the reason that I just discussed. And the reason why most people are pretty aware of is that altcoins have been underperforming. Bitcoin has been by far the most exciting thing over the past 2 months. Altcoins have been underperforming, and now just when it was seemingly starting to show us that altcoin season was really about to pick up, not only did Bitcoin start dumping, but altcoins started giga dumping, right? As expected, if Bitcoin has a big dump, altcoins aren't going to just giga pump. No, of course not. If Bitcoin initiates a 10% dump, then altcoins are likely to initiate a 20, 30, 40% dump. That's just how it goes. Everyone knows that. But, timing exactly when that Bitcoin dump was going to happen is the harder part. And with the Fed obviously reiterating they're going to be more hawkish, and 2025 is probably going to have maybe only 2 rate cuts or maybe no rate cuts, and we'll just stay higher for longer. That is one of the reasons that we see the stock market red today. You can see it's still red today. Yesterday was I think it was one of the dumpiest days in the stock market, or maybe it was the dumpiest day in the stock market since like the 2020 crash, maybe. I'm not sure. I mean, this is 3% on the stock market in a single daily candle. You can see it's pretty big, but I mean, actually, if you look here on September 3rd, that was a pretty big dump. All of these came right back down to the 21-week moving averages. So, I mean, actually, never mind. This is not a daily dump. This is a weekly. So, in fact, yeah, our daily dump is actually pretty massive. Actually, if we just look and can kind of compare, yeah, it's pretty much the biggest daily dump I can see it going back to at least the beginning of this year. And actually, yeah, in general, in a single day, this is honestly one of the biggest dumps that the SPX has seen in a long time on a daily chart. Weekly, it's not that significant because, I mean, we have weekly pullbacks, but it's it's likely that this pullback will continue and that we will continue to get a drawdown over the next couple of trading sessions as the SPX is now below 6,000. We also see that what is happening with the DXY? Well, the DXY seems to potentially be breaking out here with the knowledge that we're likely not going to get as many or any rate cuts in 2025. And so that's giving some strength to the dollar. But ultimately, again, I think this is one of those opportunities where Bitcoin potentially has the chance to have some decoupling from the stock market, because there is a new narrative. A strategic reserve quite literally is. A strategic reserve and bullish crypto regulation in general are two gigantic things. If there's anything that's going to help Bitcoin decouple from traditional financial markets, that's it. Like, that would be the thing that would do it. If you would go back 2 years ago and say, how could we ever decouple? Those would be like the 2 biggest answers possible. Actually, the 3 biggest answers would be pro-crypto regulation, a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and the third being something we already did get at the beginning of this year, a Bitcoin spot ETF. So overall, the narrative and the fundamentals for Bitcoin going much higher in 2025 is still insanely intact. It's just possible, in my opinion, that with this latest dump and with the fears going into 2025, it's possible that we potentially see a little sluggishness in the price over the next few weeks. And I mean, I personally think 2025 is still going to be very bullish, at least the first half of 2025. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if we have to see some more dumpage until then, so far, I mean, again, looking at a weekly chart, this is not really even. If you look at a weekly chart, it's like barely a pullback. And I say that because what that means is that we could still pull back substantially more. We have a CME gap down around like 80K. Any of that's possible. That would end up being about maybe like a 25% dump from its all-time high. It's not unheard of. In fact, that's pretty commonplace. So again, as I said, I don't think people, and I've read the comments too, I don't think people are really worried about Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin honestly looks pretty decent here. I think most of the panic and most of the sentiment, the upset sentiment is more so the fact that altcoins just are not getting any relief. If we're being honest, altcoins, they're kind of just getting gigabanked. And I'll be honest, until Bitcoin, well, I personally think that once pro-crypto regulation really comes in, probably in the middle or end of January, around that time, we start to see some developments and stuff. And maybe if Bitcoin just really can cement 100K and trade sideways and really show some strength, until that happens, altcoins are probably going to continue to get banged a little bit. So yeah, I mean, Bitcoin first. And with that being said too, more people than ever are more confident about altcoin seasons. And altcoins are like, again, still the hottest topic in the crypto space. Like, everybody's talking about altcoins. Everybody's making altcoin videos every day of like 5 new altcoins to buy every single day, which, first of all, if you're making a video every single day saying like, oh, here's 5 new altcoins, and it's different every single day, first of all, you're just throwing stuff at a wall to see what sticks. Likely, most of those are not going to perform very well. And even if they do, it'll probably be very short-lived. But overall, I don't think that's the healthiest approach to always be throwing out 5 different altcoins every single day as like recommendations. Basically meaning in a week, you're giving like dozens of altcoin picks, right? Every month that goes by, you're giving dozens, potentially hundreds of altcoin picks. What are the chances that they all do well? you're just throwing stuff at a wall to see what sticks so you can claim credit for later. My point being basically is that people are I think very overexposed to altcoins. Keep in mind, I have alts, but all I'm saying is that, I guess the easiest way for me to say it is that I would hope some people have at least some exposure to Bitcoin and not just all in altcoins. And I primarily make Bitcoin videos every day, so of course I'm a little biased, but also I have a ton of altcoins as well. It's actually funny. Sometimes people leave comments if I don't respond to their comment right away of telling me to like talk about their coin. They'll call me a maximalist, and I'll be like, I mean, I don't know many Bitcoin maximalists that have like 50 cryptocurrencies in their portfolio like I do, but apparently I'm a Bitcoin maximalist even though I have 50, like, dozens of other cryptos. So it's kind of weird. I think people are feeling the pain because of the altcoins, and that's understandable because it doesn't feel great holding altcoins right now. But honestly, if you're holding altcoins, you need to be a little more patient because the gains that are possible with altcoins are way more than you can get with Bitcoin. So if you think about it, it's probably not going to be easy and it's not going to be guaranteed. You're going to have to go through some pain before you experience those insane altcoin gains. I still think are coming. I'm just saying that I personally, now with the current sentiment shift, I mean, this goes without saying. We're not going to see altcoins start pumping 30% tomorrow. If Bitcoin is down 2 or 3% and the stock market is down, that is not the best environment for altcoins. It's simple as that. So we need to wait to see the actual sentiment shift and see things really start to shift. And get signed up with FEMEX or BITUNIX below if you're interested in buying Bitcoin, altcoins, or trading. Without any further ado,